can we teach our children to discover, explore, and take part in our exciting world? Well, I would like to start today with an example of my son Julius, who's in the first grade of secondary school. And it's about his history class. He had to do a chapter on the Roman Empire. And this chapter was full of facts. He had to learn a lot of facts by heart. And you all seem like a quite well-educated audience, as are most of the audience I usually speak to. And one of the questions I often ask them is, does any of you know why Emperor August was a successful leader at his time? Okay, so first rows are not allowed to answer. Well, let me tell you again, so you will remember even much better. He chose his centurions from really loyal families, and they were only allowed to lead an army troop for a limited period of time, so they couldn't become too influential. And the other thing is that he apparently left the Senate as it was, but behind the scenes he was the one to decide everything. This actually could be quite interesting information if you would relate it to a theme like power or leadership, but that was not how it was done. It was just these unrelated facts. And there were other facts he had to learn. And one of them was about the Roman government and how it was organized. And I think we can all agree that this is quite useful information since our democratic system is based upon it, although that wasn't mentioned. And the children had to learn this schedule by heart. Well, you can imagine this is quite a challenge for a regular 12-year-old, because it's quite complicated and actually a bit boring as well. But being quite bright children, most of them managed to learn this by heart just well enough to do good on their test and to remember it for a limited period of time and forget it as soon as possible. So, what would I have done if I were the teacher? I would have told the children, tomorrow, we're going to act as Romans. You're going to be the Senate, you're going to be the Parliament, and you guys will be the consuls. And we will talk about any subject I would consider useful in this chapter. What will happen is that the children would still have to learn the schedule thoroughly. But all of a sudden, it's become meaningful for them, because they actually have to do something with it. They have to act. And when they come to class the next day, they see how it works in practice and what will happen. And this is probably something they won't forget for a long period of time. And I would give them a second assignment as well, because I think children are much smarter than we generally acknowledge. I would ask them, please list for me what you see in our democratic system today that can be traced back to the Roman government. If you set ambitious goals like this, you actually ask more from the children than when you ask them just to learn something by heart. So they have to work harder. But what you will probably notice is that they will be much more involved, and that they like this way of learning much more, and it has much more effect. Well, this is me. And already when I was a little girl, I had this feeling deep down that one day I would found a really great school. But life unfolded as it did, and I became a psychologist, giving social skills trainings to children, until 10 years ago, when I moved from Amsterdam to Noordwijk. And this idea of founding my school popped up in my head again. And this was the start of this enormous, exciting organizational process. And on the other side, I had to decide what my school would be like. And although I had always been interested in learning, I had actually quite vague ideas about what a school should be like and what education should be like. I had some ideas. I wanted English classes starting at the age of 4, because at that age, children are very sensitive to learning languages. And more information is put in English, so I thought that would be important for them to learn it well. And the second thing is that I wanted social skills classes integrated in the weekly program, because I've seen for myself that you can really give children an advantage if you help them well in that field of work. And the third thing that I wanted is that I wanted art, music, and theatre classes in my school, because I think these creative subjects are just as important as history or biology or other subjects. And actually further I thought, well, I'll just stick to the regular system. Experts have given so much thought to designing methods, and you have all the modern methods. They have extra difficult work for advanced children, and they have extra practice for children that still have some difficulties. That'll probably be all right. But just to be sure, let me examine Montessori, Dalton, Jena Plan, and other school systems to see if I want some of that as well. And actually quite soon, I found out that there's a lot of information on effective and efficient learning that's not commonly found in schools today. And also, I found out that our changing world really asks for different things than we generally learn in schools. So the idea of organizing and designing my school differently was born. Well, and then learning started for me as well. I read piles and piles of books, and I went to conferences, and I spoke to people, and I have formed this group of people around me with different talents and different backgrounds to help me form my ideas. And every idea that I considered useful, I put down as a part of the puzzle that had to become my school. And as my puzzle grew, it became more and more clear that my way of working at my school would be different from other schools. So I gave it a name. I called it the Noordwijkse Methode, named after Noordwijk, because most of the educational philosophies are named after the place where it started, like Jena Plan, Dalton, Reggio Emilia. So this is what it is. And I can talk for hours, because I'm so passionate about this. But today I want to focus on a very vital and central part of it. The mission statement of the Noordwijkse Methode is that I want to enable a child to discover and explore its talents, so it can learn how to when they've discovered their talents, I want them to be able to apply them to the world around them, to make a positive contribution. So this might sound nice, but how do you get children to discover their talents? And how do you get them to make a positive contribution to the world around them? Well, nearly all educational philosophies have three elements in common. They all want children to develop knowledge, insight, and skills. Well, to me, knowledge is about knowing as much as you can about the world around you. Insight is about how you think about this knowledge. And skills is how do I apply my knowledge and my insight to my life, my learning, and my interaction with the people around me. So this might sound nice as well, but you still have to get there. So what do you do? Well, this led me to design my fundamental learning model. It's about what do you do to achieve what you want for children? Well, to me, all learning starts with inspiration. And maybe in the early days, the teacher at school was one of the few sources of inspiration to a child. But today, information is everywhere, and children can be inspired everywhere. So it's very important for them to become critical thinkers, and to ask questions, and to learn to ask questions about the information they encounter. And these can be questions like, is this a fact or an opinion? How do I know it's true? What is it related to? What are the connections to other things? How does someone else see this information? Someone with a different background or a different viewpoint? How can it be different? And is it important, and why, and to whom? And when you've addressed these questions, you come to the next step of personal reflection. So you've got this new inspiration, you thought about it, and then you relate it to yourself. What's my opinion about it, and what would I like to do with it? And when you've done that as well, you come to the final aspect of learning, and that's to act, to do something with the inspiration that you've received. And when you are starting to act, it's about how do you do it? What skills do you need? How do I get from an idea to a plan to a realization? How can I communicate about this? I'll show you an example to make myself clear. You probably all know Barba Papa, this cute guy who can transform into anything he considers useful, and he lives in this great house. Well, he might have been the one to inspire an Hungarian architect, Antti Lovak, who saw the Barba Papa house, thought about it, and thought about what he would like to do with it, and used his skills and his talents to actually build a real house in the south of France. So now you might think, oh, this is a really nice story, but we still have to meet our kerndoelen, our central goals as the government has set. So how does it relate to them? Well, my absolute conviction is that if you learn the way I just explained, you have a much bigger chance of meeting these goals than when you try to teach children to learn facts by heart. And to explain this, I will tell you a bit more about how the brain learns. Because for a long period of time, people thought that the brain worked as a sort of cupboard with drawers. And every time you learned something new, it was stowed in a separated compartment of the cupboard. And now we know that that's not really a very accurate way of thinking. And if you think about learning, it's a better way to compare the brain to a tree, a knowledge tree. And every time you learn something new, a new branch is added to your tree. And you can only learn something new if you have a big branch to add the new knowledge to. For example, when you give a 4-year-old a difficult mathematical formula, nothing will happen, because this child simply doesn't have the branch to add new knowledge to yet. So in my opinion, one of the major goals of education is to help children to form as big a knowledge tree as possible, so they can make use of as much information as possible, be it in school, outside of school, or later in life. Well, I'm going to do an experiment with you. I give you 30 seconds to learn these numbers by heart. Starting now. And did you manage? Is there someone who did manage? Who thinks he has come a long way? Oh, there. Ah, I see a finger. Can you tell me what you remember? Well, impressive. I see some other people helping as well. That's a good way of learning as well, working together. But can you explain to me how you did it? What did you do to remember? You made pairs? Excuse me? For a pattern. Well, we shouldn't underestimate Bassie and Adriaan, never. what you actually did is you made connections. Well, let me show you the numbers. It's an interesting PowerPoint. Now you can't see it again. It works. If I had shown you this slide, and I had given you 30 seconds to remember the numbers, I think most of you would have remembered. And not only be able to tell me right away, but also to remember it for quite a long period of time. Because what has happened is that you've made connections. The numbers were all of a sudden meaningful because of their context. And you could add them, you relate them to the knowledge tree that you already have. So what I actually would like to say, if you want to achieve excellence in learning, it's very important to involve children in what they're doing and to make connections. And the best way to do that is to inspire them and to give them the opportunity to think deeply about what they've seen, to relate it to themselves, and to act upon it. This way, we can help children to become the creative designers of their own world and our world. I would like to thank you very much for listening to my story, and I hope that I've inspired you, and I hope that when you go home tonight, you think about what I've told you, and you relate it to your own life, and hopefully you start acting upon it maybe tomorrow. Thank you.